Be Me, 30, feminist therapist and relationship counselor. Specialized in treating male anger and emotional dysregulation. Wrote extensively about toxic masculinity and male rage. Believed most relationship problems stemmed from male anger issues. Men are socialized to express only anger. They need professional help to access other emotions. Male anger is society's biggest relationship problem. Built career on this framework. Treated hundreds of couples. Usually identified man's anger as core issue. Recommended anger management frequently. For yelling, for frustration, for any negative emotion. If man raised voice, needed treatment. If man got frustrated, needed intervention. My approach was systematic and clear. Married for 5 years to guy I met in grad school. He was calm, even-tempered, rational. Rarely raised his voice. Handled stress well. Exactly the kind of evolved man I promoted. First few years were smooth. We had typical disagreements. But nothing major. He'd express concerns calmly. I'd respond with therapeutic language. Everything felt healthy and balanced. Things started changing around year 4. I'd been promoted at clinic. Taking on more clients. Writing book about male anger. Working long hours. Stress was building. Started noticing his anger issues. He'd seem frustrated when I worked late. Would sigh heavily when I canceled plans. Made comments about my work schedule. You're never home anymore. We haven't had dinner together in weeks. I feel like I'm living alone. Identified these as signs of anger. Passive-aggressive behavior. Resentment building. Classic male emotional suppression. Told him he needed to work on this. You're showing signs of resentment. That's just anger turned inward. You should talk to someone. He looked confused. I'm not angry, I'm lonely. I miss spending time with you. Explained using my professional framework. Loneliness in men often masks as anger. The underlying emotion is rage at abandonment. You need to address this therapeutically. He disagreed. I'm not angry. I'm just telling you how I feel. I miss my wife. That's not a disorder. But I could see the signs. The heavy sighs. The clipped responses. The frustrated energy. These were anger indicators. Started documenting his behavior. Professional habit from work. Noting when he seemed irritated. When his tone was sharp. When he withdrew emotionally. Patterns emerged clearly. Every time I worked late, irritation. Every time I canceled plans, withdrawal. Every time I prioritized work, frustrated energy. Textbook anger issues. Presented findings to him. Showed him the patterns. You're displaying consistent anger responses. Triggered by my work commitments. This is unhealthy coping mechanism. He read through my notes. Looking increasingly upset. You've been documenting my emotions? Like I'm one of your clients? Explained it was for his benefit. I'm concerned about your mental health. These patterns are clear. You need professional help. He stood up. I don't need professional help. I need my wife to be present. That's not a mental health issue. His voice was raised. First time in years. Clear sign of escalation. See? You're getting angry right now. This proves my point. He took deep breath, visibly calming himself. I'm frustrated because you're treating me like a patient. Not like your husband. But frustration was just anger. By another name. Insisted he see someone. I'm worried about you. Your anger is escalating. You need anger management. He refused firmly. I don't have anger issues. I have wife who's never home. Who's analyzing me instead of listening. His resistance was concerning. Men often denied their anger. That was part of the problem. Made appointment for him anyway. With colleague who specialized in male anger. Told him it was non-negotiable. Either you go to anger management, or I can't continue this marriage. Your emotional health is affecting us both. He stared at me. You're giving me ultimatum? About therapy I don't need? Stood firm. Yes, this is boundary for me. I can't be with someone who won't address their anger. He was silent for a long time. Then agreed. Fine, I'll go. But I'm telling you, this is mistake. Felt relieved. He'd get help he needed. Learned to process emotions healthily. Stopped directing anger at me. First session was on Thursday. He left looking resigned. I felt hopeful. This would help our marriage. He came home 3 hours later. Unusually long for first session. Usually they were 50 minutes. Asked how it went. He sat down heavily. We need to talk. Good. He was ready to discuss his issues. What did you learn about your anger? He shook his head. I didn't learn about my anger. I learned about yours. Wait, what? The therapist wanted to understand situation. So I explained everything. My perspective, your ultimatum, all of it. Felt defensive. I don't have anger issues. I'm the therapist. He continued calmly. She asked me detailed questions. About our relationship. About your work hours. About how you've been treating me. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She's supposed to address your anger. He looked at me directly. She said I don't have anger issues. She said I have absent wife. Who's pathologizing normal emotions. Felt betrayed by colleague. That's not appropriate assessment. She saw you for one session. He pulled out paper. She gave me some resources. About emotional abuse. About partners who use therapy language as weapon. About diagnosing spouse instead of relating to them. This was absurd. I'm not emotionally abusive. I'm trying to help you. He stood up. She suggested couples therapy. With different therapist. Someone neutral. She said our dynamic is concerning. Refused immediately. I'm a therapist myself. We don't need couples therapy. You need to work on your anger. He folded the papers carefully. She also gave me name of divorce attorney. Said I should consider consulting. Felt like I'd been slapped. She told you to divorce me? After one session? He shook his head. She said if you refuse couples therapy and continue insisting I have disorder I don't have, I should protect myself legally. This was unethical. Completely inappropriate. Planned to report her. He continued. I'm going to see the attorney tomorrow. Just to understand my options. Started panicking. You're overreacting. I'm just concerned about your mental health. He looked sad. No, you're not. You're using your professional framework to avoid addressing real issues. I'm never angry. I'm neglected. That's not a disorder. Tried to explain again. Neglect feelings can manifest as anger. He held up hand. Stop diagnosing me. I'm your husband, not your client. I have legitimate complaints about never seeing you. That's not pathology. But his resistance was classic. Men always denied their anger. Made post in professional group about colleague who'd overstepped. Saw my husband for anger management. Told him he doesn't have anger issues. Suggested I'm the problem. Gave him divorce attorney's name. This seems highly unethical. Expected support. Got mixed reactions instead. Some agreed it was inappropriate. Others asked probing questions. What were his presenting symptoms? Did you refer him or give ultimatum? Have you considered he might be right? That last question bothered me. Of course he wasn't right. I was the professional. I knew anger issues when I saw them. One colleague private messaged. I've noticed pattern in your case presentations. You identify male anger in almost every case. Even when presenting problem is different. Might be worth examining your bias. Dismissed this. I wasn't biased. I was trained to spot toxic masculinity. That's what good therapists did. Husband went to attorney next day. Came home with papers. Attorney suggested separation. While we figure this out. Couldn't believe this. Over anger management. You're leaving me because I care about your mental health? He sat down across from me. I'm leaving because you won't listen. Won't hear my actual concerns. Just keep diagnosing me. Tried therapy approach. I hear that you're feeling unheard. That must be frustrating. He actually laughed. You're doing it again. Therapist voice. I'm not your client. Asked what he wanted. Real question. No framework. He thought carefully. I want wife who comes home. Who has dinner with me. Who doesn't work 70 hours a week. Who treats me like husband. Not like patient or problem. These seemed like reasonable requests. But also felt like control. So you want me to sacrifice my career? He shook head. I want balance. I want to matter. I want you present sometimes. That's not about anger. That's about marriage. Felt conflicted. His points made sense. But also felt like manipulation. I think you're deflecting from your anger. He stood up. And I think you're using psychology. To avoid being wrong. I'm staying at friend's place. Give you space to think. He packed bag and left. Sat there stunned. This escalated so fast. From anger management suggestion to separation. In 48 hours. Called colleague who'd seen him. She agreed to talk. Asked why she'd given divorce attorney's name. She was direct. Because your husband doesn't have anger issues. He has legitimate complaints. About your availability and treatment of him. You pathologized normal emotions. Felt attacked. I know my husband. I see the signs. She was gentle but firm. You see what you're trained to see. You specialize in male anger. So you find it everywhere. But sometimes frustrated isn't angry. Sometimes lonely isn't resentful. Sometimes hurt is just hurt. This challenged my framework. So you think I'm wrong? She paused. I think you're applying professional lens to personal relationship and missing what's actually happening. He seemed like a reasonable man, with reasonable complaints, being treated like he's disordered. Asked about divorce attorney. I gave him that resource. Because if you can't hear him, can't stop diagnosing him, marriage is already over. He just needs to protect himself. Hung up feeling shaken. Was I wrong about this? Started reviewing my documentation. His anger signs, I'd noted. Looked at them without professional filter. Heavy sighs when I worked late. Maybe just disappointment? Clipped responses when I canceled plans. Maybe just hurt? Frustrated energy about my schedule. Maybe just loneliness? What if these weren't anger issues? What if they were valid emotions? About real problems? Went to my own therapist. Emergency session. Explained everything. She listened carefully. Do you think he has anger issues? Described his behaviors. She stopped me. Those aren't anger issues. Those are communication attempts. He was telling you he was unhappy. You diagnosed him instead of hearing him. Felt defensive. But I'm trained to identify these patterns. She leaned forward. You're trained to identify clinical anger in clients who seek treatment, not to diagnose your spouse for having normal human emotions. She continued. How many hours do you work? Admitted it was 60 to 70 weekly. When's the last time you had dinner together? Couldn't remember. When's the last time you prioritized him? Started crying. Couldn't think of recent example. She handed tissues. Your husband tried to tell you. He was lonely and neglected. You pathologized his communication. Insisted he had disorder. Gave him ultimatum about treatment he didn't need. Realized she was right. I did this. She nodded. Yes, you did. And if you want to fix it, you need to acknowledge that. Not as therapist, but as wife who made mistake. Left session understanding. I'd used my professional training as weapon against my husband. Turned his valid complaints into symptoms requiring treatment. Called him that night. Asked if we could talk. He agreed to meet for coffee. Neutral location. Saw him at cafe. He looked tired, but not angry. Just sad. Started with apology. I was wrong. About the anger management. About diagnosing you. About everything. He listened quietly. Continued. You don't have anger issues. You have wife who's neglected you. Who's been absent. Who treated you like patient instead of partner. His eyes got watery. Thank you for hearing that. Apologized more specifically. I'm sorry I documented your emotions. Sorry I gave you ultimatum. Sorry I wouldn't listen. You were trying to tell me you were lonely. And I pathologized it. He wiped his eyes. I love you. But I can't live like that. Being analyzed instead of heard. Asked if he'd consider couples therapy. Real couples therapy. With neutral therapist. He hesitated. Will you actually participate? Or will you use your training to control it? Promised to participate as wife, not as therapist. He agreed to try. Found neutral couples therapist. Someone outside our professional circle. First session was revealing. She asked about presenting problem. I started to explain his anger. Husband interrupted. See? She's doing it again. Therapist turned to me. Tell me about the anger. Described his behaviors. She listened. Then asked him to describe same situations. His version was completely different. Same events. Different interpretation. I was disappointed, not angry. I was hurt, not resentful. I was lonely, not hostile. Therapist looked at me. Do you hear the difference? Had to admit I did. She continued. You're both describing valid experiences, but you're interpreting through clinical lens. That's not useful in marriage. Gave us homework. I had to track my work hours. And times I chose work over him. He had to communicate feelings without me analyzing them. Week 1 was illuminating. I worked 68 hours. Canceled 3 plans with him. Chose work over him 6 times. The evidence was damning. Brought to next session. Therapist asked how I felt seeing data. Guilty. I didn't realize how bad it was. She turned to husband. How do you feel hearing her acknowledge this? He looked relieved. Validated. Like maybe I'm not crazy. She addressed me directly. You used your expertise as shield to avoid confronting real problem. Your work-life balance. That's not therapeutic. That's avoidance. This was painful but true. Had to examine my behavior. Why was I working so much? What was I avoiding? Spent session exploring this. Realized I was avoiding intimacy. Marriage was harder than career. Work gave clear feedback. Relationships were messy. Easier to pour energy into work, where I felt competent, than into marriage, where I felt uncertain. Husband listened to this. With compassion. I didn't know you felt that way. Explain more. In therapy, I'm the expert. I know what to do. In marriage, I don't. So I retreated to work, where I felt confident. He reached for my hand. You could have told me. Instead of diagnosing me. He was right. Therapist gave new homework. Reduce work hours to 45 per week. Have dinner together 4 times weekly. 1 date night per week. No therapy talk at home. I had to track compliance. He had to give feedback. First week was hard. Had to say no to clients. Delegate some work. Leave office by 6 p.m. Felt guilty and anxious. But came home to husband. Who'd cooked dinner. We ate together. Talked about non-work things. He smiled more than I'd seen in months. By week 3, pattern emerged. I worked less. He showed anger less. Correlation was obvious. His anger issues disappeared when I was actually present. Brought this to therapy. Therapist highlighted it. His emotional expressions were directly related to your availability. That's not disorder. That's communication. Asked if I'd been wrong about everything. She shook her head. Not wrong, misapplied. Your training is valuable, but not for diagnosing your spouse. For having feelings about your choices. This distinction was important. Could be good therapist. And bad wife. If I confused the roles. Husband shared something in session. The anger management appointment was turning point for me. Asked him to elaborate. Therapist listened to me. Actually heard my perspective. Didn't immediately say I was disordered. She validated that my complaints were legitimate. He continued. She said something that stuck with me. Your wife is treating you like a case study, not like a partner. That's when I knew I had to protect myself. Felt shame hearing this, but needed to hear it. Apologized again. More deeply this time. I weaponized my training. Used it to dismiss your needs. Made you the problem. When I was the problem. He accepted apology, but had condition. I need you to stop diagnosing me. Forever. If I'm upset, I'm upset. Not disordered. Promised I would. Therapist helped create structure. For me to separate professional from personal. Work brain stayed at work. Home brain was just wife. No analyzing, no diagnosing. Just listening and responding. This was harder than expected. Professional habits ran deep. Would catch myself. Starting to analyze his tone. Or interpret his word choice. Had to consciously stop. Just hear his actual words. Not look for subtext. 3 months into therapy. Marriage was transforming. I worked reasonable hours. We spent real time together. I stopped treating him like client. Started treating him like partner. His anger issues never returned. Because they'd never existed. Made difficult decision. To post about this professionally. I misdiagnosed my husband. Detailed the situation. How I'd seen anger where there was hurt. How I'd pathologized normal emotions. How I'd used training as weapon. What I'd learned about boundaries. Between professional and personal. Response was massive. And divided. Many colleagues supportive. Thank you for this honesty. I've done similar thing. Important reminder about boundaries. Others critical. You're undermining identification of male anger. This helps abusers. Dangerous message. Defended my position. I'm not saying male anger isn't real. I'm saying we can over-identify it. Especially those of us who specialize in it. We see what we're trained to see. Sometimes missing what's actually there. Got messages from therapists. Sharing similar experiences. Of diagnosing partners. Of using training defensively. Of needing to separate professional from personal. Also got messages from spouses of therapists. Thank you for writing this. My wife does this to me. Constantly analyzing and diagnosing. Instead of just being with me. These messages were heartbreaking. How many relationships damaged? By well-meaning therapists. Who couldn't turn it off. Started presenting on this topic. At professional conferences. Maintaining boundaries between practice and personal life. Shared my story as cautionary tale. About dangers of diagnosing spouse. About using expertise as weapon. About importance of being partner first. Audiences were engaged. Many related to struggle. Of separating professional from personal. One therapist approached after. I sent my husband to anger management. For same things you described. After hearing you, I realize I might be wrong. Encouraged her to consider his perspective. Get couples therapy. Actually listen to his complaints. She thanked me with tears. I almost lost him. Like you almost did. Thank you for being honest. 6 months into recovery. Marriage was stronger than ever. I maintained boundaries. Work stayed at work. Home was just home. Husband was just husband. Not case study. We had date night weekly. Dinner together most nights. Real conversations. About feelings, not symptoms. About marriage, not pathology. He told me one night, I have my wife back. For a while I'd lost you. To your career and your framework. Asked what changed. You stopped being therapist at home. Started being my wife. That's all I wanted. Realized how simple it was. What he'd needed. What he'd been asking for. Before I labeled it anger. Made final post about experience. 1 year after sending husband to anger management. Detailed journey. The ultimatum. Him seeing therapist. Getting divorce attorney's name. Our separation. Couples therapy. My realization. Our recovery. Current state of marriage. Post went viral. Shared by therapists. By spouses of therapists. By people who'd been misdiagnosed. By anyone who'd used expertise as weapon. Comments were revealing. I'm a lawyer and I do this. Turned every argument into legal case. My partner hates it. From accountant. I budget analyze everything. Including my girlfriend's spending. She says it feels controlling. From teacher. I correct my husband's grammar. Treat him like student. He's asked me to stop. Pattern was universal. People use their expertise as defense mechanism or control mechanism in personal relationships where it didn't belong. Follow-up post addressed this. Are you bringing your job home? Warning signs you're using expertise as weapon. Listed indicators. Diagnosing/analyzing partner. Using professional language in arguments. Treating partner like client/student/subordinate. Seeing everything through work lens. Unable to turn off professional brain. Dismissing partner's feelings as symptoms. Using expertise to avoid being wrong. Post helped many people recognize their own patterns. Start making changes. Before damage was irreparable. Current practice is different. I'm more careful about diagnosis. Ask more questions. Consider alternative explanations, especially with male clients. Not every negative emotion is anger. Sometimes frustrated is just frustrated. Sometimes hurt is just hurt. Sometimes lonely is just lonely. This nuance makes me better therapist. Had client recently. His wife sent him for anger management. Sounded familiar. Asked detailed questions about situation. He described feeling neglected. Wife worked constantly. When he expressed concerns, she said he had anger issues. Told him he needed help. Practically identical to my story. Asked about his actual emotions. I'm not angry at her. I'm sad. I miss her. I feel alone in marriage. These weren't anger issues. These were valid complaints. Suggested couples therapy instead. He was relieved. Thank you for listening. She wouldn't hear me. Just kept saying I was angry. Gave him resources for couples work. And name of good neutral therapist. Hoped they could resolve it. Like my husband and I did. Before it got to divorce attorney. Husband and I celebrated. 5 years since the separation. 10 years of marriage total. Stronger than ever. Because we'd worked through it. He brought it up at dinner. Remember when you sent me to anger management? Laughed and cringed. I'll never live that down. He smiled. It's our story. The time you tried to diagnose me. And I came back with attorney. Asked if he'd forgiven me. Of course. But I'll never let you forget it. Fair enough. That mistake taught me. More than years of training. About boundaries. About humility. About listening. About being partner. Not just professional. Made peace with experience. As painful as it was. It saved our marriage. By almost ending it. Forced me to see what I was doing wrong. What he'd been trying to say. What I'd refused to hear. Until threat of divorce. Made me finally listen. That's the story. Of how I sent partner. To anger management. 4 anger issues he didn't have. And he returned. With divorce lawyer. Who he didn't need either. Because I finally. Stopped being therapist. Started being wife. Stopped diagnosing. Started listening. Stopped using expertise as weapon. Started using it appropriately. At work, not home. That's what saved us. Not anger management. But me management. Learning my boundaries. Respecting his emotions. Treating him as partner. Not patient. as husband, not case study. That's the real treatment. That actually worked. When I finally stopped prescribing and started just being present with man I married, who never needed fixing, just needed his wife to come home. Months later, clinic invited me to keynote at National Psychology Conference. Topic ironically chosen for me. When professional insight becomes personal blindness. Felt both honored and exposed. Because that was my entire story. Prepared talk carefully. Wrote everything from place of humility. No jargon, no theory. Just truth. Walked on stage. Hundreds of therapists watching. Started by saying, I once confused my husband for a patient. Room went quiet. Could feel collective discomfort. Everyone had done it in some way. Turning loved ones into case studies. Turning arguments into interventions. Turning feelings into data. Told them how I almost lost my marriage. Because I couldn't turn off my training. Because I believed being right mattered more than being real. They listened differently. Not as experts, but as people. When I finished, standing ovation. Not for perfection, but for honesty. Afterward, dozens approached. Shared similar stories. Of diagnosing spouses. Of weaponizing empathy. Of confusing understanding with control. Realized this wasn't just my failure. It was occupational hazard. We study people so deeply that we forget to simply be people. Got email next day from one attendee. Your talk saved my marriage. I called my husband after the conference. Told him I finally saw him as man, not subject. That meant more than any publication ever could. Because this was healing through humility, not through theory. Months passed. Life slower now. Work balanced. Home peaceful. Husband and I built rhythm. Morning coffee together. Dinner most nights. No diagnosis, no performance. Just presence. Sometimes he still jokes. You gonna send me to therapy again? I laugh. Only if you start diagnosing me back. He smiles. Deal. Small moments like that remind me. Healing isn't grand. It's quiet. It's choosing to pause before labeling. To listen before interpreting. To see person before pattern. Now when clients describe relationship struggles, I ask one simple question. Are you analyzing or relating? Because that's what almost cost me everything. We think analysis brings understanding, but sometimes it just builds distance. Real connection needs curiosity, not control. Compassion, not correction. Sometimes I end sessions with same line I tell myself. You can't heal what you won't humanize. Because that's where I went wrong. I dehumanized my own husband by turning him into diagnostic symbol. And love can't survive analysis. It needs acceptance. When I look back now, it's clear. He didn't need therapy. I did. Not to fix anger, but to learn how to feel again. How to be wife without being therapist. How to love without leading session. And that's what saved me. What saved us? He didn't return with lawyer. He returned with mirror. And in it, I finally saw truth. Not about him. About me. The woman who thought she knew emotions, but hadn't truly felt her own, until she almost lost everything. Now I teach less, and listen more, work less, love deeper. And when I sit across from clients, I remember, every diagnosis has face, every theory has heartbeat, every case has story. And sometimes, healing starts when we stop trying to fix, and just start to see. Sometimes I wonder how many relationships could have survived if people stopped trying to diagnose each other. How many arguments could have ended with a sigh instead of a speech? How many "I'm fine" texts were really cries for gentleness? We spend so much time trying to sound healed that we forget healing doesn't have to sound smart. It just has to sound human. Some nights I scroll through my old videos, not to cringe, but to remember. That version of me was doing what everyone does when they're hurting, trying to build meaning out of confusion. Trying to make sense of rejection, trying to intellectualize pain so it hurts less. But pain doesn't dissolve through theory. It dissolves through truth. And truth is rarely eloquent. It's messy, awkward, vulnerable. It stutters before it lands. But when it does, it frees you. I used to think peace was boring. Now I think it's the most beautiful kind of rebellion. Because it means you've stopped auditioning for love, stopped performing for validation. Stopped mistaking attention for intimacy. When I lie beside my husband now, there's no grand philosophy between us. Just silence that feels like safety. That's the kind of peace no ideology can manufacture. Because it isn't built on theory, it's built on truth lived quietly. He once told me, "You used to talk about love like it was a test." I smiled and said, "That's because I was always trying to pass it." He laughed softly. "You already did." That's when I knew love doesn't reward performance. It rewards presence. And presence only comes when ego finally steps aside. These days, I don't chase enlightenment or empowerment. I chase calm. Because calm is clarity.